The projector screen filled with documents, bank statements, property deeds, forged signatures, and the country club ballroom fell into a stunned silence. I could feel the weight of every eye in the room, but for once, I wasn't shrinking under their gaze. My sister Brittany's champagne glass trembled in her manicured hand, the liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. My mother Mary's carefully composed face crumpled like tissue paper in rain. My father Robert's complexion turned a dangerous shade of purple as he lunged for the controls. "Turn that off," he bellowed, but Matthew, my sister's fiancé who had finally seen the truth, blocked his path. "They should see," Matthew said quietly. "Everyone should see." The murmurs grew louder as the country club elite, who had spent years praising my perfect family, began to comprehend what they were witnessing. Decades of calculated manipulation, fraud, and the systematic exploitation of one daughter for the benefit of another. "You're ruining everything," Brittany screamed, mascara intact despite her rage. I faced the crowd, my voice steadier than I ever thought possible. "No," I said. "They ruined a daughter, a sister, a cousin. They forged documents, committed fraud, and drove my cousin Sarah to suicide. A decade of silence, of swallowed pain, of exhausting myself to please people who saw me as nothing but a convenient resource, it all ended tonight." And as I stood in that ballroom, watching the carefully constructed facade of my family crumble, I found myself thinking about how it all began, with a paintbrush in my hand and a sister who demanded my house. Flashback 5 months earlier. I was elbow deep in paint, touching up the living room walls for Brittany's engagement dinner when the front door slammed with enough force to rattle the windows. My sister's voice pierced through my concentration like a needle. "Amy, why aren't you dressed yet? Everyone will be here in an hour." I climbed down from the stepladder, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my wrist to avoid smearing paint on my face. "Just finishing some touch-ups," I explained, gesturing to the wall. "There was a scratch that. Nobody cares about the wall." Brittany waved her perfectly manicured hand dismissively. Her engagement ring caught the light, a 3-carat diamond that probably cost more than my annual salary. "Matthew's parents are coming. This place needs to look perfect." I bid back the response that this place always looked perfect because I maintained it, because I'd spent the last 5 years of my life keeping this house from becoming another foreclosure statistic. While Brittany was posting Instagram stories from Cabo San Lucas and Santorini, I was working 60-hour weeks and living off ramen to make mortgage payments that my father's gambling habit had left in ruins. "Give me 20 minutes to shower and change," I said instead, forcing a smile that felt like stretching plastic across my face. As I headed upstairs, childhood memories flickered through my mind like an old film reel. Mom organizing Brittany's dance recitals while I stayed home to help with chores. Dad attending Brittany's soccer games while I worked after-school jobs. The pattern was so consistent it had become invisible to me, like air or gravity or the perpetual knot of anxiety in my stomach whenever family gatherings approached. I stood under the shower, hot water washing away paint flecks, but not the weight of expectations. I learned long ago that in my family, love was conditional, and I never quite met the conditions. My parents hadn't always been this way. There was a time, before Dad's gambling, before Mom's obsession with appearances, when they had seemed capable of genuine affection. I remembered sitting on Dad's lap when I was 6, helping him sort through his stamp collection. "You've got a good eye, Amy," he'd said, his voice warm with pride as I carefully arranged the stamps by color and country. "Detail-oriented, just like your old man." That was before he discovered poker, before the rush of winning big became more important than stability, before he started disappearing for days at a time and coming home with empty pockets and hollow eyes. Mom had been different too, less rigid, more spontaneous. She used to bake cookies with me on rainy Sundays, letting me lick the spoon despite her concerns about raw eggs. "Just don't tell your pediatrician," she'd whisper conspiratorially. But that changed when Dad's gambling started affecting their social standing. Suddenly, appearances became everything. The thought of the perfect family became more important than the reality of our happiness. I turned off the shower and stared at my reflection in the steamy mirror. At 35, I looked older than my years, fine lines at the corners of my eyes, a permanent furrow between my brows from years of worry. I thought about the master's degree I'd never finished, the career advancement I'd put on hold, the relationships I'd let wither because I was always working, always saving, always trying to keep this house, this symbol of what family should be, from slipping away. Amy? Hurry up. Brittany's voice echoed up the stairs. I closed my eyes for a moment, summoning the energy to face another evening of being invisible in my own home. At the family dinner, the doorbell rang just as I was zipping up my dress. Olivia, my best friend and roommate, poked her head into my room. Her eyes held that mixture of concern and protectiveness that I'd come to rely on over the years. Your parents are here, she said. Want me to run interference? My hero, I applied a quick swipe of lipstick. How bad is it? Your dad's already complaining about the thermostat, and your mom's rearranging the appetizers I set out. Wonderful. I took a deep breath, smoothing my dress with trembling hands. Why did I still care so much what they thought? Why, after all these years, did their approval still matter? Because they're family, a small voice whispered in my head. And family is supposed to love you, but did they? Had they ever? I remembered when Olivia and I had first met during my second job at a local coffee shop. I'd spilled an entire latte down my shirt 10 minutes before closing, and instead of getting angry, she'd handed me her cardigan without a word. Later, as we cleaned up, she'd asked why I was working two jobs. I told her about Dad's gambling debts, about the house, about dropping out of grad school to save it. Why not let it go? She'd asked. Start fresh. I hadn't been able to explain it then. How the house represented everything I'd hoped my family could be. How letting it go felt like admitting defeat. How, despite everything, I still believed my sacrifices might someday be enough to earn their love. Olivia had understood anyway. 2 months later, when her lease ended, she'd moved into my spare room. I'll help with the mortgage, she'd said. And you won't be facing them alone anymore. Now, I squeezed her hand gratefully before heading downstairs. There's our Amy, Mom said as I descended the stairs, air kissing my cheek. Her perfume, expensive and overwhelming, clouded around me. Darling, the house looks. She paused, her eyes scanning the freshly painted walls, the polished hardwood floors, the carefully arranged flowers. Well, you tried your best. Dad didn't even look up from his phone. Heat's too high in here. You're wasting money. I wanted to remind him that I was the one paying the heating bill along with the mortgage, property taxes, and every other expense associated with this house. But I'd learned long ago that facts didn't matter much in my family's narrative. Nice to see you too, I muttered. But they had already moved on, gravitating toward the door where Brittany and Matthew had just arrived with his parents. Matthew's parents were exactly as I'd imagined them, polished, wealthy, reserved. Mrs. Campbell wore the kind of casual designer outfit that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Mr. Campbell had the confident bearing of a man who'd never worried about money a day in his life. They greeted me with polite smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Their gaze is already sweeping past me to assess the house. What a charming place, Mrs. Campbell said, in the same tone someone might use to describe a quaint but outdated museum exhibit. Amy's been pouring her heart into it, Olivia said, appearing at my side with drinks. There was a slight edge to her voice that only I would notice. How lovely, Mrs. Campbell replied, clearly not meaning it. Brittany mentioned you work. 2 jobs, is it? Just one now, I said. I'm an accountant at Meridian Financial. Amy just got promoted to senior analyst, Olivia added. Oh, Mrs. Campbell looked genuinely surprised, as if she couldn't quite reconcile the image of me in paint-splattered clothes with someone who might have a professional career. That's unexpected. Amy's always been the practical one, Mom interjected, steering the conversation away from my accomplishments. Brittany, darling, why don't you show everyone the dining room? Amy set it up just as you asked. The dinner itself was excruciating. I sat there, picking at food I'd spent all day preparing, while everyone gushed about wedding plans and future grandchildren. Matthew's father kept talking about investment opportunities, and I caught my dad's fingers twitching against his thigh, a tell I knew too well from the gambling days. Those twitches had cost our family everything once before. I'd been 22, just graduated from college, when Dad's investment opportunity turned out to be a gambling debt so massive it nearly sent our house into foreclosure. My mother had stood in the kitchen, crying, while Brittany locked herself in her room. I was the one who took a second job, who dropped out of my master's program, who sat with bank managers and worked out payment plans. The memory of those days still made my stomach tighten. The sleepless nights, the creditors' calls, the humiliation of begging for extra shifts at work. I'd been so naive then, believing it was a temporary sacrifice, that once the crisis passed, we'd all go back to normal, that Dad would stop gambling, that Mom would acknowledge my sacrifice, that Brittany would see me as more than just the reliable sister who fixed everything. 5 years later, and nothing had changed except that I'd become better at hiding my exhaustion, better at swallowing my resentment, better at pretending this was the life I'd chosen rather than the one that had been thrust upon me. I was lost in these thoughts when Brittany cleared her throat. "So, Amy, we wanted to discuss something important with you." The room went quiet, too quiet. I noticed my parents exchange glances, a silent communication that excluded me. "As you know," Brittany continued, her voice soft but expectant, "Matthew and I want to start our lives together somewhere special, somewhere with history." My stomach dropped. I knew where this was going, but surely they wouldn't. "We think it would be wonderful," Mom jumped in, her voice syrupy sweet, "if you gave the house to your sister as a wedding present." The fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against the plate. "Excuse me?" "It makes perfect sense," Dad added gruffly. "You're single, focused on your career. Brittany needs a proper family home." "A proper family home," I repeated slowly, each word coded in disbelief. "You mean the home I saved from foreclosure? The one I've been paying for since I was 22? Brittany rolled her eyes, a gesture so dismissive of my 5 years of sacrifice that I felt physical pain. "Don't be dramatic. We all helped." "All helped?" I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "Where was your help when I was working 60-hour weeks? When I had to drop out of my master's program to make the payments?" "Now, Amy," Mom's voice took on that sickly sweet tone she used when trying to manipulate me. "We're family. Family supports each other. Family." The word echoed in my head, hollow and meaningless. I thought of my childhood, of always being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who sacrificed so Brittany could shine. I thought of the family vacations I'd missed because I was working extra shifts, the birthdays spent alone because everyone was attending Brittany's events. "Is that what we're calling this?" I laughed, and it sounded strange even to my own ears. Olivia touched my arm gently. "Maybe we should all take a breath." "No need," I said, suddenly calm. A strange clarity washed over me, as if I'd been underwater for years and had finally broken the surface. "I'll think about it." The relief on their faces made me sick. They thought they'd won, just like always. Brittany beamed, already pulling up Pinterest boards on her phone to show Matthew's mother renovation ideas for my house, the house I'd sacrificed everything to save. "I was thinking we could knock down that wall between the kitchen and dining room," Brittany said, pointing to her phone. "Create a more open concept." "That's load-bearing," I said automatically. "Well, I'm sure we can work around that," Mrs. Campbell said, patting Brittany's hand. "You have such vision, dear." "And we'd redo the master suite completely," Brittany continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "The current setup is so basic." The basic setup she was referring to was the result of 3 months of my weekends spent tearing out old carpet, refinishing hardwood floors, and painting walls. I'd done most of the work myself, learning from YouTube videos and the occasional help from neighbors, because we couldn't afford contractors. "We could have it ready before the wedding," Mom said excitedly. "Wouldn't that be perfect?" "You could move right in after the honeymoon." "Perfect," Brittany agreed, clapping her hands. "And Amy could help with all the renovation costs since she's not contributing to the wedding itself." The conversation continued around me, my family and the Campbells discussing my house, my life, as if I wasn't even there. I felt myself receding, watching the scene from a distance, as I had so many times before when the pain of being invisible in my own family became too much to bear. But this time, something was different. This time, beneath the familiar hurt, I felt something else stirring: anger. Not the flickering irritation I usually tamp down, but something deeper, steadier, like hot coals that had been banking for years and were finally ready to ignite. The decision. Later that night, after everyone left, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the business card Jake, my realtor friend, had given me months ago. The house had appreciated significantly in value since I'd taken over the mortgage. Jake had mentioned a cash buyer looking for properties in the neighborhood, but I dismissed the idea then. I'd put too much of myself into this house to let it go. But now I wondered, what exactly was I holding on to? The walls that had witnessed my tears? The floors that had absorbed the sound of my pacing at 3 a.m., calculating whether I could make next month's payment? The garden where I'd planted flowers the day after paying off Dad's gambling debts? Every bloom bought with borrowed money and overtime shifts? My hands didn't shake as I dialed Jake's number. Jake, it's Amy. Remember that conversation we had about selling? I'm ready. When I hung up, Olivia was standing in the doorway, her expression concerned. You okay? No, I said honestly, but I will be. I looked around at the walls I'd painted, the floors I'd refinished, the life I'd built while they took and took and took. Something inside me hardened, like concrete setting. They wanted my house? Fine. But they were about to learn what happens when you push the family doormat too far. I remembered my grandmother, my father's mother, sitting with me on the porch swing when I was 12. Sometimes, she told me, her voice low so my parents wouldn't hear. The people who should love you the most are the ones who take advantage of you the worst. When that happens, Amy, you have to decide. Are you going to let them keep taking, or are you going to save yourself? At 12, I hadn't understood what she meant. At 35, watching the moonlight cast shadows across the kitchen I'd renovated with my own hands, I finally did. Olivia sat down across from me, pouring us both a glass of wine. Talk to me, she said. I'm selling the house, I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Jake says we can close in 48 hours with a cash offer. Are you sure about this? She didn't try to talk me out of it, which was one of the countless reasons I loved her. She just wanted to make sure I'd thought it through. For 5 years, I've been killing myself to keep this house because I thought it was the glue holding our family together, I said, tracing the rim of my wine glass. But tonight made me realize there's no family to hold together. There never was. I thought about all the milestones I'd missed, the promotions I'd turned down because they required travel, the relationships I'd let wither because I was always working, the vacations I'd skipped to make extra mortgage payments. All for a family that saw me not as a daughter or sister, but as a resource to be exploited. What about your grandmother's things? Olivia asked gently. The furniture she left you? My grandmother, the only member of my family who had ever truly seen me, had left me several pieces of antique furniture when she died. Each piece had come with a story, with a history that connected me to something larger than myself. I'd cherished them, not just for their beauty, but for what they represented. The knowledge that I had been known, that I had been valued. I'll take those, I said. The rest. Well, they can fight over it after I'm gone. And where will you go? I hadn't thought that far ahead. For so long, my entire identity had been wrapped up in this house, in my role as its protector. Who was I without it? I don't know yet, I admitted. Somewhere new. Somewhere without memories. Olivia squeezed my hand. Wherever it is, I'm coming with you. I blinked back sudden tears. Here was family, real family, chosen and true. I'd like that. So, she said, raising her glass. To burning bridges? I thought about it for a moment. No, I replied, clinking my glass against hers. To building new ones. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years. At the realtor's office, Jake's office smelled like coffee and fresh printer paper. He spread the documents across his desk, pointing to each signature line with practiced efficiency. Once you sign these, the sale is final, he said. The investors are offering cash, which means we can close in 48 hours. Are you absolutely sure about this? I picked up the pen, its weight unfamiliar in my hand. How much again? 425,000. Enough to clear the mortgage and walk away with a decent cushion, My hand hovered over the paper. 5 years of my life reduced to a number on a page. I thought about all the overtime shifts, the missed vacations, the credit card debt I'd racked up keeping this house afloat. I thought of my father, 19 years old and cocky, sitting at poker tables thinking he was smarter than everyone else. My mother had told me once, during a rare moment of vulnerability, that dad had lost his college fund in a single weekend. That's when his father cut him off, she'd said. He's been trying to prove himself ever since. It didn't excuse what he'd done to our family finances, but it helped me understand the desperate glint in his eyes whenever opportunities arose. I thought of my mother, raised in a family where appearances meant everything. Her own mother had been the queen of the country club set, teaching her that social standing was currency more valuable than money. Mom had learned too well the art of maintaining appearances at all costs, even if it meant sacrificing one daughter's well-being for another's. And Brittany, golden, beautiful Brittany, had she ever realized what was happening? Or had she simply grown up believing she deserved the best of everything, including my sacrifices? Do it, I said, and started signing. With each signature, I felt something breaking and reforming inside me. Not my heart, exactly, but something deeper, more fundamental. My sense of who I was in relation to them. Jake collected the papers with a somber nod. He'd known me for years, had seen my struggle to keep the house. You're doing the right thing, Amy. Sometimes the only way to heal is to walk away. Olivia was waiting outside in her car. Well, it's done, I said, buckling my seatbelt. They take possession on Thursday. Amy, she grabbed my hand, her eyes serious. Once you do this, there's no going back. Your family isn't family. I pulled my hand away. They're just people who got really comfortable using me. My phone buzzed with a text from Brittany, having engagement photos taken at the house tomorrow. Make sure the lawn is mowed. I showed Olivia the message. She whistled low. The audacity. Oh, it gets better. I scrolled through more texts. Mom's already planning the reception. Dad's talking about converting my home office into a nursery. They really think I'm going to hand it over, don't they? They don't think, Olivia said darkly. They expect. The next morning, I drove past the house on my way to work. A photographer was setting up equipment while Brittany posed on my front porch in a flowing white dress. Mom directed the scene like a Hollywood producer, rearranging potted plants I'd spent years cultivating. I kept driving. At work, I found myself unable to focus on the spreadsheets in front of me. For so long, my life had been defined by obligation to the house, to my family, to the narrative they'd created for me. Without those obligations, who was I? What did I want? I'd never really had the luxury of asking these questions before. Every decision had been made within the constraints of what was possible while keeping the house afloat. Now, for the first time in my adult life, I was facing true freedom. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. My phone buzzed with an email from Jake. Buyers want to do a walkthrough tomorrow. All looking good for Thursday closing. I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, anticipation, and an unexpected grief. Not for my family, but for the version of them I'd spent years believing in. The loving parents, the supportive sister, they had existed only in my imagination, constructs I'd created to justify my sacrifices. At Sunday brunch, a tradition Mom insisted on maintaining, Brittany held court at the local cafe, surrounded by wedding magazines. The caterers need a final headcount, she announced. Amy, you're not bringing anyone, right? We'll just put you at the singles table. Actually, I said, stirring my coffee, I might not make it. The table went silent. What do you mean you might not make it? Mom's voice could have frozen hell. It's your sister's wedding. At my house, Brittany added, where you're basically just the house sitter at this point. Dad lowered his newspaper. Amy, enough with the attitude. Your sister needs. I have to go. I stood up, throwing cash on the table. Work stuff on a Sunday? Mom scoffed. Since when do you? Since I have to pay for everything myself, the words came out sharper than intended. A couple at the next table glanced over. I spent the rest of the day at Olivia's apartment, sorting through boxes of old photos I'd grabbed from the house. Most were yellowed snapshots of family vacations I'd never been on, celebrations I'd missed while working. Then I found it, a handwritten note tucked inside an album, dated 3 years ago. Dad's messy scrawl. Talked to Jerry about selling the house. Could clear enough to cover debts. Amy doesn't need to know yet. My hands started shaking. They tried to sell it behind my back while I was killing myself to save it. You okay? Olivia called from the kitchen. I showed her the note. They were going to sell it anyway, after everything you did. She read it twice. Jesus, Amy, these people aren't worth protecting anymore. I pulled out my phone and texted Jake. Everything's still on for Thursday? His reply came instantly. All set. New owners doing final walkthrough at 9 a.m. I had one more family dinner to get through, one more night of pretending. Mom had ordered takeout, claiming she was too busy with wedding plans to cook. We sat around my dining room table, my table that I'd refinished myself, while Brittany detailed her renovation plans. The wall between the kitchen and dining room has to go, she declared. It's so dated. Load-bearing, I muttered. What? Nothing. I stood up and placed my house keys on the table. Everyone fell silent, staring at them. Mom's eyes welled up. Oh, sweetheart. I knew you'd do the right thing. Finally showing some family loyalty. Dad nodded approvingly. Brittany snatched up the keys, beaming. I knew you'd come around. Matthew, baby, we should start packing tonight. I walked to the door, pausing only to send one final text to Jake. It's happening tomorrow. Behind me, I could hear them planning, celebrating, dividing up my life like vultures. They had no idea what was coming. Sometimes karma needs a little push, and tomorrow morning at exactly 9 a.m., karma was showing up with moving trucks and legal documents. I smiled all the way home. The day of reckoning, at exactly 8:57 a.m., I parked across the street from my house. Jake's car was already there, along with two moving trucks and a silver Mercedes I didn't recognize. Right on schedule, Olivia said from the passenger seat. You ready? I watched the new owners, a well-dressed couple in their 40s, step out of the Mercedes. Jake greeted them with a handshake. 3, 2, 1, I counted down. Right on cue, Mom's SUV screeched around the corner. She barely put it in park before jumping out, face twisted in confusion. Dad's truck pulled up seconds later, followed by Brittany's BMW. What's going on? Mom demanded, marching toward Jake. Who are these people? Jake smiled professionally. Good morning. I'm the realtor handling the sale. You must be the previous tenant's family. Sale? Brittany shrieked. What sale? I stepped out of my car, Olivia right behind me. Dad spotted me first. Amy. He stormed over. What the hell is this? This, I said calmly, is the new owners taking possession of their property. Mom's face went white. What are you talking about? You gave us the keys. I gave you my spare keys. The deed's been in my name for 5 years, and now it's in theirs. I gestured to the couple, who were watching the scene unfold with growing discomfort. You can't do this. Brittany lunged forward, but Matthew caught her arm. We're supposed to live here. The wedding is your problem now. I handed Jake the final paperwork. The house is sold. I'm calling the police. Mom fumbled with her phone. Go ahead. I shrugged. The sale's legal. I have every right to sell my property. Your property? Dad's face turned purple. We're your family. Family. I laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut glass. Family doesn't try to sell the house behind my back while I'm working 2 jobs to save it. Dad stumbled back like I'd slapped him. What are you talking about? I found your note, Dad. The one about talking to Jerry about selling the house 3 years ago. I looked him straight in the eyes. While I was working 60-hour weeks to save this place, you were trying to sell it behind my back. His face crumpled, age lines suddenly more pronounced. For a moment, I saw him not as my father, but as a broken man who'd spent his life chasing the next big win, never finding it. Amy, this is insane. Matthew spoke up, looking between Brittany and me. The house was yours the whole time? Every mortgage payment, every repair, every property tax bill, I met his eyes. While your fiance was posting beach selfies, I was working overtime to keep a roof over her head. You ungrateful little, Mom started, but Olivia stepped forward. Choose your next words carefully, she warned. The movers approached, clipboards in hand. We're ready to start, Miss Burton. Where would you like us to begin? The master bedroom, I said. Everything's labeled. Brittany let out a strangled scream. You're just going to let them take everything? Not everything. I pulled out my phone, showing her the inventory. Only what's mine, which is most of it since I bought it all. But don't worry, I left your old posters in the garage. Mrs. Burton? Jake called to my mother, who was now crying dramatically. You need to move your vehicle. The trucks need access to the driveway. This isn't happening, she sobbed. Amy, how could you do this to your sister? The same way you did it to me, I met her gaze. By putting myself first. Dad grabbed my arm. You listen here. Security? Jake called out, and two uniformed officers stepped out of their patrol car. I hadn't even noticed them arrive. Is there a problem? Dad released me instantly. The new owners would like to begin their move-in. Jake continued smoothly. Anyone not involved in the property transfer needs to leave. This isn't over. Brittany spat, mascara running down her face. You think you've won? You just nuked this family, Amy. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time in years. My little sister who'd taken and taken until there was nothing left to take. No, I said quietly. I finally left the blast radius. The next hour was chaos. Mom wailed, Dad threw a chair. Brittany tried to barricade herself in my office until Matthew physically carried her out. Through it all, I stood with Olivia and Jake, watching movers carefully pack my life into trucks. As I supervised the movers, I found myself remembering the day we moved into this house. I was 12, Brittany 9. Dad had just landed a big insurance client, and Mom was ecstatic about moving to a better neighborhood. I remembered how Brittany had claimed the largest bedroom before we'd even finished the tour, how Mom had immediately agreed it was perfect for her, how I'd ended up in the small room at the back of the house that got no natural light. Even then, the pattern had been established. Brittany's wants came first. My needs were secondary, if they were considered at all. You sure you're ready for all of this? Jake asked as the last box was loaded. I watched my family huddle by their cars, shooting me looks that ranged from hatred to disbelief. 5 years of sacrifice, manipulation, and silent resentment all coming to a head on a sunny Thursday morning. You know what's funny? I said, climbing into my car. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. Olivia squeezed my hand. Where to? I started the engine, taking one last look at the house I'd saved, the family I'd lost, and the life I was finally leaving behind. Anywhere but here. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of Brittany in my rearview mirror, screaming something I couldn't hear, but for once her voice couldn't reach me. The aftermath. The fallout hit social media first. Mom's Facebook post painted me as a monster who betrayed family trust and destroyed her sister's dreams. Her country club friends filled the comments with thoughts and prayers. Have you seen this? Olivia tossed her phone onto our new apartment's coffee table. Your mom's telling people you forged the deed. I scrolled through the post. Funny how she left out the part where they tried to sell it first. Our new apartment was small but bright, a third-floor walk-up in a converted warehouse downtown. The exposed brick walls and tall windows couldn't have been more different from the suburban colonial I'd left behind. That was intentional. I wanted nothing to remind me of the life I'd abandoned. The first few days after the sale had passed in a blur of moving boxes and paperwork. I'd taken a week off work, claiming a family emergency, which wasn't exactly a lie. I'd spent the time setting up our new place, opening a new bank account at a different bank, and ignoring the barrage of texts and calls from my family. My phone buzzed. Another blocked number. I'd gotten 12 calls since morning, mostly Dad's gambling buddies offering legal advice. You should change your number, Olivia suggested, unpacking books onto our new shelves. I will, I said. I'm just waiting for one more call. Even as I said it, I wasn't sure who I was waiting to hear from. Not my parents, certainly not Brittany. Perhaps some part of me still hoped that someone, a distant relative, an old family friend, would reach out to say they understood, that they'd seen the pattern too, that I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did. A knock at the door made us both jump. Amy? It's Matthew. Can we talk? Olivia raised an eyebrow. I nodded, and she opened the door. Matthew looked terrible. His usually pristine suit was wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes. I know I should have called first, but Brittany's been monitoring my phone. Come in. I gestured to the couch. Coffee? Please. He sat heavily. I've been going through everything since Thursday, the house, the loans, all of it. Why didn't anyone tell me? Would you have believed me over Brittany? He accepted the coffee Olivia handed him. Probably not. But now, he pulled out his phone, showing me a text thread. Your dad's been asking me to invest in some sure thing. Says he knows a guy. Let me guess. Someone named Jerry? How did you? Same guy he tried to sell the house to 3 years ago. I showed him the note I'd found while I was still paying the mortgage. Matthew's face fell. There's more, isn't there? I thought about how much to tell him. Matthew had seemed like a decent person caught in my family's web of deception. Did he deserve to know the whole ugly truth? Or was it kinder to let him walk away with some illusions intact? Before I could decide, my phone lit up with a notification. Brittany had tagged me in a public post. Some sisters become best friends, others become backstabbing snakes who destroy families. She's been like this all week, Matthew said quietly. The wedding's on hold. She keeps saying she'll fix it, make you pay somehow. Speaking of paying, Olivia pulled up an online banking app. Your fans tried to access Amy's old accounts this morning. Good thing we moved everything. Matthew put his head in his hands. I don't even recognize her anymore. Or maybe I never really knew her. I thought about Brittany, about the little girl who'd once followed me around the house, wanting to play dress up and have tea parties. When had that child turned into the entitled woman who expected the world to bend her whims? Had it been gradual, this transformation, or had she always been this way, and I'd just been too eager to see the best in her? People show you who they are if you pay attention, I said gently. I just didn't want to see it for a long time. A commotion outside had made us all look up. Through the window, I spotted Brittany storming across the parking lot, designer handbags swinging like a weapon. How did she? Matthew started. Probably followed you. I stood up. Olivia, get your phone ready. The door burst open before we could lock it. Brittany stood there, mascara perfect despite her rage. You home wrecking. She threw her drink at me, some fancy iced coffee that stained my shirt brown. Happy now? You've ruined everything. Brittany. Matthew stepped forward. Stop this. Stop? She stole our future. That house was supposed to be ours. It was never yours, I said, wiping coffee from my face. You just assumed, like always, that you deserved it. We're family. She screamed. You owed us. Owed you what? The years I lost? The money I earned? The life I put on hold? Oh, poor Amy, she sneered, always playing the victim. You think you're so perfect, so righteous, but you're just jealous because mom and dad always loved me more. The room went silent. Even Brittany seemed shocked by her own words. I remembered being 16, standing in the kitchen after dad had lost a month's mortgage payment at the casino. Mom was crying. Brittany was throwing a tantrum because we'd have to cancel her sweet 16 party. I'd quietly offered the money I'd been saving for college, $2,000 from my after-school job at the mall. Mom had taken it without a second thought. You're the responsible one, she'd said, as if that explained why my dreams were less important than Brittany's party. You're right, I said quietly. They did love you more, and you all made sure I never forgot it. My phone buzzed again, a voicemail notification from a number I hadn't seen in years. Aunt Faith's voice filled the room. Amy, it's your aunt. I heard what happened. There's something you need to know about why things really went down like they did. Call me. Brittany's face went pale. Don't you dare talk to her. Why not? I stepped closer, afraid she'll tell me about the other times you tried to take what wasn't yours. Brittany, Matthew's voice was different now. What is she talking about? Nothing. She's lying, like always. But her voice shook. We're leaving now. No. Matthew stayed put. I want to hear this. Fine. She grabbed her bag. Stay here with this bitter, lonely failure. See if I care. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. Olivia, who'd recorded everything, whistled low. Well, that was intense. You okay? Matthew asked me. I looked at my coffee-stained shirt, then at my phone, where Aunt Faith's message still waited. No, but I will be. I pressed play on the voicemail. Amy, what they did to you, it wasn't just about the house. There's a bigger story here, going back years. Your grandmother's will, the original deed. They've been playing this game a long time. Call me when you're ready for the truth. I met Olivia's eyes, then Matthew's. Something shifted in the air, like the moment before a storm breaks. Ready to go deeper? Olivia asked. I saved Faith's number. Time to find out what else they've been hiding. Uncovering the truth. Aunt Faith's house looked exactly as I remembered. A small blue cottage with wind chimes on the porch. I hadn't been here since I was 12, before the family cut her out. You came. She opened the door before I could knock. Age had silvered her hair, but her eyes were sharp as ever. I wasn't sure you would. Olivia squeezed my hand before heading back to the car. I'll pick you up in 2 hours. Faith led me to her kitchen, where a folder thick with documents waited on the table. Tea? Let's skip the small talk. I sat down. What's this about Grandma's will? She poured 2 cups anyway. Your mother never told you why I stopped coming to family gatherings, did she? Mom said you had a falling out over money. Money? Faith laughed bitterly. I caught them trying to forge Mom's signature on property transfer documents 3 months before she died. My hands started shaking. What? The house was supposed to go to you directly. Mom knew about Robert's gambling, about Mary's enabling. She wanted to protect you. She pulled out a yellowed document. This is the original will. I kept a copy after they destroyed the official one. I read it twice. My name was there, clear as day. Sole inheritor of the property. They killed the will, Faith continued, rewrote everything through their lawyer friend Jerry. The same Jerry your dad has been involved with for years. The pieces started clicking. But they couldn't transfer the deed without my signature, I said slowly. That's why they needed me to save it from foreclosure. They needed it in my name first, so they could pressure me to sign it over later. Faith nodded. They've been playing this game for years, setting up Brittany as the golden child, making you feel worthless, indebted. The perfect scapegoat. I remembered all the times I'd tried to earn their approval, staying up late to help with household chores, taking the blame for Brittany's mistakes, working extra shifts to cover Dad's debts. Always trying to earn their love, I whispered. You weren't the black sheep, Amy. You were the sacrifice. The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd always suspected that my place in the family was different from Brittany's, but to hear it stated so plainly, to see evidence that it had been a deliberate strategy rather than an unfortunate dynamic, made my stomach churn. There's more. Faith pulled out another document. 2 years ago, your mother tried to add Brittany's name to the deed while you were still paying the mortgage. How do you know all this? I work at the county records office, she smiled grimly. They didn't know that when they tried to file the paperwork. I sat in stunned silence, decades of manipulation suddenly coming into sharp focus. All this time, I whispered. Every extra shift, every missed opportunity. It was never going to be enough, was it? They designed it that way. Faith reached across the table. You weren't failing them, Amy. They were failing you. My phone buzzed with a text from Matthew. Found something in Brittany's email. Old messages about the house. You need to see this. I showed Faith the message. Not surprised, she said. Your sister was in on it from the beginning. Your parents made sure of that. I thought of Brittany as a child, watching Mom and Dad treat me differently, learning from them that I was less deserving, that my purpose was to provide for her. Had she ever questioned it? Or had she simply accepted her role as the entitled one, as I had accepted mine as the responsible one? There's one more thing you should know, Faith said, her voice gentle but firm. Your mother and Brittany, they tried this before. What do you mean? She pulled up an old news article on her tablet. Remember cousin Sarah? Her mental breakdown 10 years ago? I read the headline, Local Woman Commits Suicide After Family Property Dispute. They drove her to it, Faith said quietly. Same pattern, same manipulation. She just wasn't strong enough to fight back. The room seemed to tilt as memories flooded back. Sarah, pale and withdrawn at the last family gathering she'd attended. Mom, dismissing Sarah's obvious distress as attention-seeking. Dad, making jokes about Sarah's overreaction to a little financial disagreement. I'd been in college then, focused on my own life, only peripherally aware of the family drama involving Sarah and her inheritance. She'd killed herself a week after Christmas. I remembered the funeral, how Mom had made a show of grieving while whispering to Dad about Sarah's selfishness when she thought no one could hear. Oh my God, I whispered. They did that to her? Faith nodded, her eyes sad. Your grandmother left Sarah a trust fund for her education. Your parents convinced her to sign it over to them for safekeeping. When she needed it for graduate school, they claimed she gifted it to them. She couldn't prove otherwise. Another memory surfaced, Sarah, crying in the bathroom at a family gathering, me awkwardly offering her tissues, not knowing what to say. I trusted them, she'd sobbed. They were family. She had a daughter? I asked, remembering Matthew's text. She was pregnant when she died, Faith said. The baby survived. A little girl named Hannah. She was adopted by a couple in the next county, and she never knew. Her adoptive parents thought it would be too painful. But apparently, she's been looking into her birth mother's history recently. My heart ached for this girl I'd never met, this cousin once removed who had lost her mother before she was even born. Another casualty of my family's manipulation and greed. I have to do something, I said. They can't just get away with this. What are you thinking? I looked at the documents spread across the table. Evidence of years of manipulation, fraud attempts, calculated abuse. The truth? I said. All of it. It'll destroy them. They destroyed themselves, Faith said, the same smile I'd seen in old photos of my grandmother crossing her face. I'm just going to make sure everyone knows it. Faith handed me a final envelope. Your grandmother wrote you a letter. She knew what they were planning. Read it when you're ready. Outside, Olivia was waiting in the car. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. More like several. I showed her the documents. Call Matthew, tell him to meet us at the apartment, and see if Jay can recommend a good lawyer. Why? Because it's time for the real story to come out. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. I know just who to send it to first. The subject line was simple. To the family that never was. Olivia started the car. You sure about this? I looked at Faith standing in her doorway, at the evidence in my lap, at the future stretching out before me, finally free of their shadows. Watch me. The confrontation, the country club ballroom buzzed with chatter. What should have been Brittany's wedding rehearsal dinner had become a family support gathering, Mom's attempt to save face after everything fell apart. I hadn't planned to come, but when Matthew texted that Brittany was planning to announce a new beginning at the family estate, I knew I couldn't miss it. Ready? Olivia adjusted my blazer as we walked in. Everyone's staring, I muttered. Let them. She linked her arm through mine. They're about to stare a lot harder. I saw my mother cross the room, champagne glass in hand, holding court among her friends. She'd always thrived on sympathy, on being the martyr. Today she wore it like a designer dress, perfectly tailored to her needs. Dad stood nearby, already flushed with alcohol, nodding as another man spoke to him, probably about another investment opportunity. Mom spotted us first, her champagne glass freezing halfway to her lips. Amy, you weren't invited. Actually, I was. I held up Matthew's invitation. +1. Dad appeared, face flushed from drinking. You've got some nerve showing up here. Oh, I wouldn't miss this, I smiled. Especially not Brittany's big announcement. As if summoned, Brittany clinked her glass for attention. She'd lost weight, but her smile was triumphant. Everyone, thank you for coming to support our family during this transitional time. The crowd murmured sympathetically. While recent events have been challenging, she continued, glaring at me, I'm thrilled to announce that Daddy's found a way to buy back our family home. The new owners accepted our offer this morning. Applause broke out. Mom wiped away theatrical tears. That's interesting, I said loudly, considering the new owners signed a non-transfer clause yesterday. The room went silent. Brittany's glass shook. They can't sell for at least 5 years. I pulled out my phone. Oh, and Dad? Jerry called. He said to tell you the casino's still waiting for their money. Dad's face went white. You talked to Jerry? We had a fascinating conversation about forged documents and illegal property transfers. I looked at Mom. Should we tell everyone about Cousin Sarah too? Don't you dare. Mom hissed. What about Sarah? Someone called from the crowd. Nothing. Brittany rushed forward. She's lying, like always. Am I? I connected my phone to the room's presentation screen. Because I have emails, bank records, the original will they destroyed. Even the paperwork where they tried to transfer the deed behind my back. The screen filled with documents. Gasps rippled through the crowd as people started reading. Turn that off. Dad lunged for the controls, but Matthew blocked him. They should see, he said quietly. Everyone should see. You helped them, I told Brittany. You knew about Sarah, about everything. You watched them break me down for years, and you helped. I didn't. She started, but her voice lacked conviction. Check your sent emails. I swiped to a new screen. Mom, Amy's working late again. Perfect time to get those papers filed. More gasps. Someone started recording on their phone. You're ruining everything. Brittany screamed. No, I faced the crowd. They ruined a daughter, a sister, a cousin. They forged documents, committed fraud, drove Sarah to suicide. Lies. Mom shrieked. We're your family. Family? I laughed. Let me tell you about family. For the next 10 minutes, I laid it all out. The manipulation, the fraud attempts, Sarah's story. With each revelation, the crowd's horror grew. The police have been notified, I finished. The DAW is particularly interested in the forged documents, and Sarah's case is being reopened. Dad slumped into a chair. Mom's mascara ran in black rivers down her cheeks. You all gambled with me like some security deposit, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room. And I just cashed out. Brittany lunged at me, but Olivia stepped between us. Touch her, and assault charges joined the fraud ones. This isn't over. Brittany spat. Actually, it is. Matthew stepped forward. I've given statements to the police about everything. The crowd started moving toward the exits, whispers following them like smoke. Mom's country club friends couldn't get out fast enough. You've destroyed this family, Mom sobbed. No, I disconnected my phone. You did that years ago. I'm just making sure everyone knows why. As Olivia and I walked out, I heard Brittany's last desperate scream. I'll make you pay for this, but her voice held no power anymore. The truth had stripped it away. Outside, Faith was waiting in her car. How'd it go? I showed her the video someone had already posted online. They'll never recover from this. Good. She squeezed my hand. Sarah would be proud. My phone buzzed with messages. Support from strangers who'd seen the video, old friends connecting dots from years ago, reporters asking for comments. What now? Olivia asked. I watched through the window as my family's carefully constructed FOD crumbled in real time, years of lies exposed in one night. Now, I smiled. We let karma finish what truth started. Epilogue 2 years later. The local news played quietly in my new office as I reviewed renovation plans with Olivia. Our home restoration business was taking off, thanks partly to the viral story of how I'd saved and sold my own house. Another email from a reporter, Olivia said, checking her phone. They want to know if you'll comment on the plea deal. Delete it. I focus on the blueprints. That chapter's closed. The news anchor's voice caught my attention. Local businessman Robert Burton faces up to 5 years for fraud and forgery charges. His wife Mary and daughter Brittany await sentencing next week. Olivia muted it. You're not watching the sentencing? Fate's going for Sarah. I traced a line on the blueprint. That's enough. My phone buzzed Matthew. He'd started his own financial consulting firm after the scandal broke. Hey, got a minute? There's someone you should meet. Client? Better. Sarah's daughter. She's 18 now. Just found out what really happened. Wants to thank you. My hand froze over the blueprints. I didn't know she had a daughter. Neither did most people. Her adoptive parents kept her away from the whole mess. But she saw the video, did some digging. A notification popped up on my screen. Another attempt by Brittany to access my accounts. Even facing jail time, she wouldn't quit. Send her by the office, I said. I'll make time. After hanging up, I walked to the window. Below, construction crews worked on our latest project, converting an old factory into affordable housing, the kind of place I wished I'd had when I was struggling to save that house. Jake knocked on my door. Got those property listings you wanted. Thanks. I took the folder. How's the market? Interesting timing, he grinned. Your old house just got listed again. New owners are moving overseas. Let me guess. Brittany's trying to buy it through a shell company? Third attempt this month. He sat down. She never learns, does she? None of them did. I opened my laptop to show him an email. Mom's still sending daily guilt trips from her sister's spare room. Dad's looking for investors for his comeback plan from prison. Olivia snorted. At least they're consistent. The last 2 years had been a journey of rediscovery. After the confrontation at the country club, I'd thrown myself into therapy, trying to untangle the knots of guilt and obligation that had bound me to my family for so long. It hadn't been easy. There were nights when I woke up panicking, convinced I'd made a terrible mistake, that I should call them and apologize, make amends, return to my role as the family doormat. But those nights grew fewer and farther between. With each passing month, I felt lighter, more myself, as if I'd been carrying a weight for so long that I'd forgotten what it was like to stand up straight. Olivia and I had used part of the house money to start our business, Phoenix Renovations. We specialized in restoring old properties, bringing them back to life for people who would actually appreciate them. The irony wasn't lost on me, that I'd found purpose in rebuilding after spending so long trying to maintain something broken. A young woman appeared in my doorway, barely 18, with Sarah's eyes. Miss Amy? I'm Hannah. Sarah was my birth mother. The room went quiet. I stood up. Come in, please. She clutched a folder. I found these in my adoption papers. Letters from my mom about what they did to her. About you. I tried to make it right, I said softly, for her. You did. Hannah smiled through tears. The trust fund they stole from her, the one they used for the house, it's been recovered. My college is covered now, just like she wanted. Olivia and Jake slipped out, leaving us alone. I have something for you too. I pulled out an envelope, the one Faith had given me. Your grandmother wrote this letter, the real one, not the version they forced her to write. Hannah's hands shook as she took it. Will you read it with me? We sat together, unfolding the last true words of a woman who had seen through the lies, who'd tried to protect us both. My dearest Amy, it began. If you're reading this, they've already tried to take everything. But remember, houses can be rebuilt, families can be chosen, and the truth, no matter how long buried, finds its way to light. I remembered the day I'd finally read that letter, a week after the confrontation at the country club. I'd sat on the floor of my new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, weeping not just for what I'd lost, but for what I'd never had, a family that valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. My phone buzzed again, a text from Faith. Brittany's sentencing just finished. 5 years. Mary got 3. They're still blaming you. I showed Hannah the message. She gripped my hand. Does it still hurt? Less every day, I looked around my office at the life I'd built from the ashes of their betrayal. They thought breaking me would make me easier to control. Instead, it made me impossible to break again. I thought about the girl I'd been 5 years ago, desperate for approval, willing to sacrifice everything for people who saw me as nothing more than a resource. That girl was gone, replaced by a woman who understood her own worth, who knew that true family is chosen, not imposed. Grandma would be proud, Hannah whispered, of both of us. Outside my window, the construction crew raised a new wall against the sky. Below it, our company's sign caught the sun. Phoenix Renovations, building new beginnings. Want to get coffee? I asked Hannah. I have some stories about your mom, the real ones, not their versions. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I'd like that. As we walked out, Olivia called after me. What should I do with these? She held up a stack of letters, more guilt trips from the family that wasn't anymore. I thought about Sarah, about Hannah, about truth and consequences, and the family we choose. Recycle them, I said. We're building something better now. Hannah smiled Sarah's smile, bright and unbroken. Together we stepped into the sunlight, leaving the shadows where they belonged, behind. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Martinez's gavel struck with finality. $847,000, she announced, her voice resonating through the wood-paneled chamber. That's the amount diverted from the Eliana Henderson Trust over 7 years, funds explicitly intended for Caroline Henderson's sole benefit. I stared at my mother's perfectly composed face as it finally crumbled. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the shock as the judge continued. Mrs. Elizabeth Henderson and Mr. Richard Henderson are hereby removed as trustees, effective immediately. My brother Jason's charm had vanished, replaced by an ugly mask of rage I'd never seen before. His fiancée Vanessa dabbed theatrically at non-existent tears. Furthermore, I'm referring evidence of forgery to the district attorney's office for review. The gavel struck again, and just like that, at 48 years old, I was finally free. Caroline, my mother's voice cracked as I walked past. How could you do this to your family? I turned to face her directly, feeling the weight of decades lifting from my shoulders. No, Mother. How could you do this to me? Outside, my lawyer Michael Green squeezed my shoulder. It's not quite over with the criminal investigation, but the trust is yours now. I nodded, the spring breeze carrying the scent of something I hadn't experienced in years. Possibility. I'm ready, I said. And for the first time in my life, I truly was. 3 months earlier, the discovery. The flowers for the ceremony alone will cost $40,000, but they'll be simply divine. Vanessa's voice grated on my nerves as I sat through yet another wedding planning session. At 45, my brother's fans had the energy and self-absorption of someone half her age. I sipped my coffee in the corner of the upscale bridal boutique, nodding automatically when anyone looked my way. My role was clear: provide free graphic design work and enthusiastic support for my 52-year-old brother's second wedding, a wedding that would apparently rival European royalty. Caroline, darling, my mother Elizabeth touched my arm, her manicured nails digging slightly into my skin. At 59, she still commanded every room she entered. You seem distracted. I hope you're taking notes for the invitation designs. Of course, Mother, I responded automatically, the same way I had for decades. Amanda, the wedding planner, flipped through her portfolio. Now, about the venue in Santorini. To secure the dates in peak season, we'll need to transfer the first $100,000 deposit this week. My mother nodded approvingly. Richard has already arranged the transfer from Abigail's trust fund. I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my lips. Grandmother's trust fund? An awkward silence fell over the room. Amanda shifted uncomfortably. Well, from Caroline's trust, technically, my mother corrected herself smoothly. But it's all family money. And how much is this venue? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Amanda glanced uncertainly between my mother and me. The complete package is $400,000. The room seemed to tilt. $400,000. From my trust fund. The same fund I'd been denied access to when I needed money for my son Noah's college tuition. When I tried to start my design business after my divorce. when I asked for help with a down payment on a modest condo. Isn't that wonderful? My mother's voice had that warning edge. Jason and Vanessa will have the wedding of the century. Certainly beats your little courthouse affair with Watch's name. Jason chuckled, referring to my ex-husband. Though that was probably appropriate considering how that turned out. I felt heat rise to my face, remembering my small wedding 15 years ago, before my family had systematically undermined my marriage, constantly reminding Robert of his inadequacies until he couldn't take it anymore. I need some air, I muttered, gathering my things. Don't forget, dinner at the house Sunday, Mother called after me. Where's something that doesn't make you look so tired? The weight of years. The drive home to my small apartment was a blur of memories and realizations. I'd been 25 when grandmother Abigail died, leaving me $1.2 million in a trust fund. At the time, still married with a young son, I'd been grateful when my parents offered to manage it until I was ready. After all, my father was a successful businessman, and they only wanted what was best for me. Or so I thought. As I waited at a red light, I suddenly remembered grandmother's final days. Her withered hand gripping mine, her eyes unusually focused despite the medication. Don't let them make you small, Caroline, she'd said. Promise me. But I had. Year after year, decision after decision. After the divorce, when I was struggling to rebuild my life, every request for funds was met with the same response. It's for your own protection, dear. You're just not ready for that kind of responsibility. Meanwhile, Jason's failed ventures received unlimited funding. His first divorce settlement, his entrepreneurial pursuits that never seemed to materialize into actual businesses. I pulled into my apartment complex, not the place a woman approaching 50 with a trust fund should be living, but all I could afford on my graphic designer's salary. The hot flash that suddenly swept over me was only partly due to perimenopause. The rest was pure, distilled rage. Inside, I pulled out my laptop and began calculating. If the trust had started at $1.2 million and they were now planning to spend $400,000 on Jason's wedding, how much had already been spent? How much of my future security had been siphoned away? My phone rang. Margaret, my best friend since college, and now a nurse at the local hospital. How was the wedding planning from hell? She asked. They're spending $400,000 for my trust fund on Jason's wedding, I said flatly. The silence on the other end was profound. Margaret, you need a lawyer, she said finally. And I know exactly who. The meeting, Michael Green's office overlooked downtown, the view suggesting success without ostentation. At 58, he specialized in elder law and financial abuse cases, something I hadn't known existed until Margaret explained it. Mrs. Henderson, he greeted me, his handshake firm. Miss, I corrected automatically. I've been divorced for 10 years. My apologies, Ms. Henderson. He gestured to a chair. Your friend Margaret mentioned this concerns your grandmother's trust? I took a deep breath and began my story. As I spoke, Michael took notes, his expression growing increasingly grave. Let me be clear, he said when I finished. Your parents have been systematically misappropriating funds from a trust explicitly set up for you, while simultaneously denying you access to those same funds? Yes. And they've made withdrawals using your forged signature? I nodded, sliding across the financial documents I'd managed to obtain. I don't know how much they've taken in total, but I know they just approved $400,000 for my brother's wedding in Santorini. Michael studied the papers, his expression hardening. Based on these documents alone, we have grounds for immediate action. Breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, forgery. He looked up. Why now, Miss Henderson? After all these years? The question hit me like a physical blow. Why now? Why not 10 years ago when I was struggling through divorce? Why not 5 years ago when no one needed tuition money? I'm turning 50 next year, I said quietly. I'm starting to face age discrimination at work. I have health issues that aren't covered by my insurance. And I just discovered they're spending almost $500,000 on my brother's second wedding while I can barely afford my one-bedroom apartment. I looked down at my hands, seeing the faint age spots that had appeared in recent years. I don't have time to start over again. This is my last chance for security. Michael nodded, understanding in his eyes. Your case could destroy them, financially and legally. Are you prepared for that? I thought about decades of subtle put downs, of resources denied, of being made to feel like a failure while Jason was celebrated for his mediocrity. What do you need from me? I asked. The gathering storm. Caroline, darling, you've hardly touched your salmon, Mother said, her voice carrying that familiar note of criticism disguised as concern. Sunday dinner at my parents' house, a tradition I'd endured for decades. I smiled tightly and took a small bite. Across the table, Jason was regaling everyone with tales of his latest business venture, while Vanessa showed off her engagement ring at every opportunity. So the venue in Santorini is confirmed? I asked casually. Oh yes, Vanessa gushed. It's absolutely breathtaking. Olympic-sized infinity pool, private beach accommodations for 200 guests. Sounds expensive, I commented. Worth every penny, Mother said firmly. Jason deserves the best. I thought about Michael's instructions. Gather evidence, record conversations, document everything. I was thinking, I said carefully, about using some of grandmother's trust fund to finally open that design studio I've talked about. The reaction was immediate and predictable. Oh, Caroline, Mother laughed lightly. We've been through this. Commercial real estate is so risky. And at your age, Jason added, starting a new business? Be realistic, sis. I'm 48, not 80, I said, keeping my voice steady. Exactly. Father spoke up, his first contribution to the conversation. You're at an age where you should be focused on retirement planning, not risky ventures. Speaking of retirement planning, I pressed on. I'd like to see the trust fund statements, just to understand what I'll have available when the time comes. My parents exchanged a quick glance. That's not necessary, Mother said dismissively. Robert handles all that. You'd just find it confusing. I'm sure I could manage to understand, I insisted. Caroline, Father's voice took on an edge. Let's not ruin dinner with financial discussions. I nodded and retreated, but not before noting the flash of panic that had crossed my mother's face. She knew exactly how much they'd taken, and she didn't want me to find out. The flashpoint, careful, Consuelo, my parents' longtime housekeeper, whispered as she helped me clean up after dinner. It's getting too quiet. She'd been with our family for over 30 years and had seen everything, including, I suspected, the systematic diminishing of my place in the family. What do you mean? I asked, though I had a feeling I knew. Your mother. She's making calls. She and Mr. Jason, they're worried about something. Her eyes, wise with age and observation, met mine. You're finally asking questions, aren't you? Before I could answer, my mother's voice rang out from the hallway. Caroline, a word, please. In my father's study, both my parents waited. Mother stood by the fireplace, father seated behind his desk. It was their power configuration, one I'd faced countless times over the years. We're concerned, Mother began, her voice carefully modulated. You seem agitated lately. I'm fine, I replied evenly. Are you? Father shuffled some papers. Because this sudden interest in the trust fund, these questions. Robert mentioned you'd contacted him directly. So they knew. I'd visited our family's financial advisor last week, playing the role of the clueless daughter eager to learn. He'd shown me just enough to confirm my suspicions and Michael's. I'm approaching 50, I said simply. It seems reasonable to understand my financial situation, which is precisely why we manage the trust, Mother said. To ensure your security. By spending $400,000 on Jason's wedding? The room went silent. Father's face flushed. Mother's paled. That money is being invested in creating important social connections, she finally said. Connections that benefit the entire family. And the $80,000 for Jason's cryptocurrency venture that failed? The $120,000 for his first divorce settlement? How exactly did those benefit me? Father's hand went to his chest, a gesture I'd seen him use strategically when conversations became uncomfortable. My heart is fine. I cut him off, surprising all of us. Your last checkup showed no issues. I confirmed with Dr. Matthews. Mother's eyes narrowed dangerously. You had no right. No right? To inquire about the health of my father, whom I love. Or no right to ask about my own trust fund. Or perhaps no right to exist as anything other than an afterthought in this family? Years of therapy after my divorce had taught me to recognize manipulative tactics. I saw them all now. Father's faint health crisis, mother's attempt to reframe my questions as irrational behavior, the collective gaslighting that had been my family's specialty for decades. We've only ever wanted to protect you, mother insisted, her voice trembling slightly. After what happened with Robert, and that awful depression you went through. The depression that happened because you systematically undermined my marriage and then told me it was all my fault? I stood up. I think I should go. Caroline, father called as I reached the door. Remember who you're speaking to. We're your parents. I turned back, feeling strangely calm. Yes, you are. And I deserve better. The strategy. They've withdrawn over $600,000 in the past 5 years alone, Michael said, reviewing the documents on his desk. Mostly to fund your brother's ventures and lifestyle. We were in his office, going through the evidence we'd gathered over the past 3 weeks. Bank statements, forged signatures, recorded conversations, a paper trail of betrayal that made my stomach turn. The trust was originally $1.2 million, I said. That means half of it is gone. More than half, when you account for the returns the investment should have generated. Michael slid a document across the desk. According to our financial analyst, if properly managed, the trust should be worth closer to $1.8 million today. I felt ill. So they've cost me over $1 million. At minimum. He leaned forward. Here's the good news. We have more than enough evidence to remove them as trustees immediately. The emergency hearing is scheduled for next week. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Bridesmaid dress fitting Saturday. Don't forget we need those invitation designs by Friday. I showed Michael the message. They're proceeding as if nothing has changed. That works in our favor, he replied. The more they spend now, the stronger our case for financial mismanagement. What happens after we win? I asked. To them, I mean. They'll have to repay everything they've misappropriated with interest. If they can't pay immediately, their assets will be liened. And given the evidence of forgery, there may be criminal charges. I thought about my parents' home, where I'd grown up. The country club membership they prized. My mother's social standing that meant everything to her. I don't want to destroy them, I said quietly. I just want what's mine. Michael's expression softened. In my experience, people who misappropriate funds on this scale often have other financial issues. Your parents may not be as solvent as they appear. I remembered subtle signs over the years. The delayed renovations on the house, my father's increasingly frequent mentions of clients lost, my mother's recycling of designer outfits she once would have worn only once. They've been using my money to maintain their lifestyle, I realized. Not just to fund Jason. That's my assessment as well, Michael agreed. Are you having second thoughts? I thought about the years of struggling to make ends meet while being told I wasn't responsible enough for my own inheritance. About working overtime while battling perimenopause symptoms because I couldn't afford to cut back my hours. About watching my son take out student loans while his uncle lived in luxury. No, I said firmly. I'm 48 years old. It's time I stopped being the family's ATM and started planning for my own future. My phone buzzed again. A group text from mother. Sunday dinner, 6 p.m. sharp. The wedding planner will be joining us to finalize details for Santorini. Caroline, wear the blue dress I bought you. It's the only one that doesn't make you look washed out. Michael raised an eyebrow. Your mother has a way with words. You have no idea, I sighed. But this Sunday will be different. The confrontation. The roast smelled perfect as mother removed it from the oven. Sunday dinner, our weekly family ritual. Usually, I dreaded these gatherings, but tonight was different. Caroline, darling, set the good china, mother called. The wedding planners joining us to discuss the Santorini plans. I placed each plate with careful precision, noting the irony of being asked to set the table for a dinner celebrating the theft of my inheritance. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Michael, in position. 10 minutes. The flowers arrive. Vanessa burst into the dining room, brandishing a massive arrangement. Aren't they divine? Just a sample of what we're doing for the wedding. They're gorgeous, honey, mother cooed. And such a bargain at only $12,000. I kept my face neutral as I arranged the silverware. Another text buzzed. 5 minutes. Ready? Yes. I typed back. Jason, open the champagne. Mother gestured to the expensive bottle on the counter. We're celebrating. My brother grinned, popping the cork with his usual flourish. To the wedding of the century. Everyone gathered around the table. Mother, father, Jason, Vanessa, and Amanda, the wedding planner, who was already deep into discussing table settings. The custom crystal centerpieces alone will set the tone, Amanda gushed. And with the budget we're working with, we can really create magic. The doorbell rang. That's odd. Mother frowned. Are we expecting anyone else? I'll get it, I said, standing up. No, no. Sit down. Consuelo will answer it. She has the night off. I moved toward the foyer. Don't let the roast get cold. I opened the door to find Michael, impeccable in his suit, holding a leather briefcase. Right on time, I whispered. He nodded, following me to the dining room. Mother, father, I said clearly. This is Michael Green, my lawyer. The champagne glass slipped from Jason's hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. You're what? Mother's face went pale. Mrs. and Mr. Henderson. Michael stepped forward, opening his briefcase. I'm here to serve you with legal documents regarding the misappropriation of funds from the Abigail Henderson Trust, established for the sole benefit of Caroline Henderson. What is this? Father stood up, his face reddening. Caroline, what are you doing? Mother's voice rose to a shriek. What I should have done years ago. My voice was steady. You're being sued for breach of fiduciary duty, financial fraud, and multiple counts of forgery. This is ridiculous. Mother screeched. We're your parents. Everything we've done has been to protect you. Michael continued, placing documents in front of each of my parents. You are hereby notified that an emergency injunction has been filed to freeze all trust assets pending investigation of unauthorized withdrawals totaling approximately $600,000. Caroline, Jason started, his charm kicking in. Come on, sis. We can talk about this. The latest unauthorized withdrawal, I cut him off, was $100,000 for your wedding venue in Santorini, paid 3 days ago. Amanda, the wedding planner, slowly started gathering her papers. I should probably go. You forged my signature, I said, looking directly at Mother. Multiple times. Did you think I wouldn't find out? We had to. She stood up, mascara already running. You're not capable of managing that kind of money. Look how you're behaving right now. Mrs. Henderson, Michael interjected smoothly. I strongly advise you to stop speaking and contact your lawyer immediately. Get out of my house. Father shouted, face purple. Both of you. Gladly. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Vanessa, you might want to start looking at smaller venues. The blank checks from my trust fund just bounced. You can't do this. Jason jumped up. Mother, tell her she can't do this. Actually, Michael smiled thinly. She not only can, but should have done it sooner. Good evening, everyone. We walked out to the sound of chaos erupting behind us. Vanessa's sobs, Mother's hysterics, Jason's angry shouts, and Father's stunned silence. In Michael's car, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. You did well, he said, pulling away from the curb. Very composed. My phone started blowing up with texts and calls. Lock them all, Michael advised. From here on out, they communicate through me. I did as he suggested, then sent one final text to Margaret. It's done. She responded immediately. Finally. Come over. Wine is ready. Want me to drop you at your friend's? Michael asked. I looked back at my childhood home, growing smaller in the side mirror. The dining room lights were still blazing, shadows moving frantically behind the windows. Yes, I said. I think this calls for wine. The hard part starts tomorrow, he warned. They won't go down without a fight. I thought about the look on Mother's face when Michael served the papers, about Jason's charm failing him for once, about years of manipulation finally exposed. I'm ready, I said. And for the first time in my life, I truly was. The aftermath. The call started at 6 a.m. First Mother, then Father, then Jason. I let them all go to voicemail, following Michael's instructions. By noon, I had 37 missed calls and 63 text messages. Caroline, please. Mother's latest voicemail sobbed. We're your family. How could you do this to us? I forwarded it to Michael and continued working on my graphic design project, trying to focus despite the emotional turmoil. In my mind, I kept returning to the summer I was 16. Mother had discovered my sketchbooks filled with fashion designs and torn them up, calling them childish fantasies. That same month, she'd spent $15,000 on golf lessons for Jason, who quit after 3 sessions. Art isn't a career, she'd said. It's a hobby for women who don't need to support themselves. Yet here I was, supporting myself through art for 20 years, despite their continuous undermining. A hot flash washed over me, a reminder of yet another challenge in this transitional phase of life, one I was facing alone, without the financial security that should have been mine. My phone rang. Michael, your brother just tried to access the trust account, he said without preamble. Attempted to transfer $200,000. Let me guess. For his amazing investment opportunity? Exactly. But here's the interesting part. Papers rustled in the background. We found something while blocking the transfer. Multiple signatures, supposedly yours, on previous withdrawal forms. The forgeries we already knew about? No, these are different. And they're in your brother's handwriting, not your mother's. My stomach dropped. Jason forged my signature too? Looks like both of them did. Multiple times, multiple accounts. Michael's voice hardened. This just went from civil litigation to potential criminal charges. My phone buzzed with another text. Father, this time. Your mother hasn't stopped crying. Is this what you wanted? To destroy our family? I thought about all the times I'd been made to feel that family harmony depended on my silence and compliance. The family gatherings where I was expected to applaud Jason's mediocrity while my achievements went unmentioned. The subtle ways I'd been taught that my needs and dreams were less important. They're all trying to contact me, I told Michael. Document everything, but don't respond. More typing sounds. We're meeting with the judge tomorrow morning. Emergency hearing about the trust management. After hanging up, I checked my email. A message from Mother to my work address. I've scheduled you an appointment with Dr. Marcus for Thursday. Your behavior clearly indicates another anxiety episode. Remember what happened after your divorce? We're just trying to help you through this breakdown. I forwarded it to Michael with the note. Now they're trying to claim I'm mentally unstable. His response came quickly. Standard tactic. Don't worry, we have your recent medical records showing perfect mental health. The doorbell rang. This time it was Margaret, carrying takeout and wine. Saw Vanessa's Instagram story, she said, pushing past me. She's calling you a trust fund stealing snake to her 10,000 followers. Lovely. Oh, and your brother's posted too. She pulled up his profile. Family is everything. Sad when money corrupts the ones you love. Pray for healing. I poured the wine. They're trying everything. Guilt, bribes, gaslighting, social media shame. But you're not backing down this time, Margaret said firmly. No. I showed her the latest text from Mother. If your grandmother could see what you're doing to this family, your grandmother would be cheering you on, Margaret said, clinking her glass against mine. She knew exactly what they were, Caroline. Why do you think she left the money specifically to you and not to your parents? I hadn't considered that before. Grandmother had always been closer to me than to her own daughter. She'd encouraged my art when Mother dismissed it, praised my independence when Father called it stubbornness. She'd seen the dynamics at play long before I had. My phone rang again. Michael. Turn on Channel 7 News, he said quickly. I did. There was Jason, standing outside his startup's office, giving an interview. Tragic situation. My sister has always struggled with financial responsibility. As a family, we've tried to protect her from herself. These allegations are just a cry for help. He's trying to control the narrative, Michael said. But he just made a huge mistake. How? He admitted on camera that the family was controlling your trust against your wishes. Also, check your email. Someone anonymous just sent us years of private messages between your brother and parents discussing how to handle your inheritance. I opened the email. There were hundreds of messages dating back years. Plans, schemes, discussions of forged documents. Who sent this? The metadata suggests it came from your family's financial advisor's office computer. Michael sounded pleased. Looks like not everyone agrees with their methods. I thought of Robert Peters, the family financial advisor who had shown me just enough documentation to confirm my suspicions. Had he been uncomfortable with the deception all along? Another text from Jason. Last chance, sis. Drop this now, or everything comes out. Remember that time after your divorce when you were on antidepressants? Mother kept it quiet then, but I forwarded it to Michael. Now they're threatening me. His response was immediate. Perfect. Each threat makes our case stronger. Get some rest. Tomorrow morning, we show the judge everything. I looked at Margaret. They really think they can still win this. She refilled my wine. Then they clearly don't know who they're dealing with anymore. I thought about the woman I'd been 10 years ago, broken by divorce and family manipulation. The woman who had apologized for existing, who had accepted the narrative that she was incapable, irresponsible, less than. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone who had survived, who had raised a son alone, who had built a career despite every obstacle thrown in her path. Someone who was finally, at long last, standing up for herself. The verdict. The courtroom felt smaller than I expected. Mother sat rigidly in her designer suit, father beside her looking deflated. Jason wasn't present, probably too busy doing damage control after his disastrous TV interview. All rise, the bailiff called out. Judge Martinez entered, her expression stern as she reviewed the documents before her. This is a hearing regarding the Abigail Henderson Trust, she began. I've reviewed the initial filings. Mrs. Henderson, you claim your daughter is mentally unfit to manage her trust? Mother's lawyer stood. Yes, Your Honor. We have documentation of a previous mental health episode from after her divorce. Objection. Michael interrupted. Those sealed medical records were illegally obtained and show nothing more than situational depression following a difficult divorce. Fully resolved. We have current psychological evaluations confirming Ms. Henderson's complete mental competency. The judge nodded. Objection sustained. Now, about these signatures. She held up several documents. These supposed authorizations for withdrawals dating back years. Your Honor, Mother's lawyer tried again. As trustees, my clients were acting in their daughter's best interest. By forging her signature? Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow. Please explain how committing fraud serves anyone's best interest. A soft gasp escaped Mother. Father stared at his hands. We have evidence of systematic misappropriation, Michael said, standing. Multiple forged signatures, unauthorized withdrawals, and most recently, an attempt to spend $400,000 of trust funds on their son's wedding without the beneficiary's knowledge or consent. That's not. Mother started to speak, but her lawyer shushed her. Furthermore, Michael continued, we have documentation of threatening messages sent to my client when she discovered the fraud. He presented printed copies of the texts and emails, including attempts to use private medical information as blackmail. The judge's expression darkened as she reviewed the messages. Mrs. Henderson, are you aware that threatening to disclose private medical information for coercion is a criminal offense? Mother's perfectly maintained facade cracked. She's my daughter. Everything I did was to protect her. I watched my mother, seeing beneath her designer outfit and perfectly coiffed hair to the desperate, controlling woman beneath. For the first time, I wondered what had shaped her. What insecurities drove her to control and manipulate? What fears led her to elevate one child while diminishing another? It didn't excuse her actions, but it helped me see her as human, flawed and frightened, rather than the all-powerful figure she'd been in my mind for so long. Your Honor, her lawyer interjected, my client acted within her rights as trustee. By funneling money to her son's failed business ventures, Michael produced more documents. $600,000 transferred to various LCs owned by Jason Henderson, all without the beneficiary's knowledge or consent. He's an entrepreneur. Mother burst out. Those were investments. Investments of your daughter's money, Judge Martinez said coldly. Money specifically left to her by her grandmother. The bailiff approached with a sealed envelope. Your Honor, this just arrived from the original trust attorney's office. The judge opened it, reading carefully. Her eyebrows rose. This is interesting, she said. A letter from Abigail Henderson to be opened only in the event of trust disputes. She began to read aloud. To whom it may concern, I leave this trust to my granddaughter Caroline, knowing full well her parents' tendency to favor her brother's interests over hers. I have watched them diminish her for years while enabling her brother's reckless behavior. This money is for Caroline alone. Any attempt by her parents to control or redirect these funds goes explicitly against my wishes. Mother's sob echoed through the courtroom. Father finally looked up, his face ashen. Your Honor, Michael stood again. Given the evidence of fraud and mismanagement, we request immediate removal of the current trustees and a commotion at the back of the courtroom interrupted him. Jason burst in, Vanessa trailing behind him. This is ridiculous. He shouted. You can't just. Judge Martinez's gavel cracked like a gunshot. One more word and you'll be held in contempt. Bailiff, remove them. As Jason was escorted out, I caught his expression. No longer charming, just ugly with rage. I thought of the little boy who had once been my protector, who had taught me to ride a bike and defended me from bullies. Somewhere along the way, our parents' favoritism had twisted him, convincing him that he was entitled to anything he wanted, including my inheritance. I've seen enough, the judge declared. I am ordering an immediate freeze of all trust assets. Mrs. Henderson and Mr. Henderson are hereby removed as trustees, effective immediately. Furthermore, I'm referring evidence of fraud to the district attorney's office for review. Your Honor, please. Mother's lawyer started. I'm not finished. Judge Martinez's voice could have frozen fire. Full accounting of all trust expenditures for the past 5 years will be conducted. Any misappropriated funds must be repaid with interest. Mr. Green, your client has full control of her trust from this moment forward. I felt tears sliding down my cheeks. Almost 25 years of being controlled, diminished, gaslit over. We're your parents, Mother whispered as I passed their table. How could you do this to us? I stopped, looking at her directly for the first time in weeks. No, Mother. How could you do this to me? As I spoke, I remembered all the times I'd asked myself the same question over the years. After my divorce, when they'd refused to help with Noah's college expenses. When I'd been diagnosed with perimenopause at 45 and couldn't afford the treatments not covered by insurance. When I'd watched my bank account dwindle while Jason lived in luxury. Outside the courtroom, Michael squeezed my shoulder. It's not quite over. The criminal investigation. I know. I took a deep breath. But at least now I'm free. Rebirth. The forensic accountant's report landed on Michael's desk with a thud. 3 months had passed since the court hearing, and the full scope of my family's financial manipulation was finally clear. $847,000, Michael said, flipping through the pages. That's how much they diverted from your trust over 7 years. I stared at the number. More than I thought. Your brother's ventures took the bulk of it. He pointed to a chart. 6 failed businesses, that ridiculous crypto scheme, and of course, the wedding venue deposit. My phone buzzed. Another email from Mother. Please, Caroline. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof. We can work this out as a family. Delete. The judge's final ruling came in this morning. Michael continued, pulling out another document. Your parents have 30 days to begin monthly restitution payments or face property liens. And Jason? The DA is still reviewing the forgery evidence. But his latest startup's investors pulled out after the story hit the local business journal. Something about questionable financial ethics. I checked my phone again. Jason's LinkedIn profile had changed. No longer CEO/founder, but seeking new opportunities. There's something else, Michael said, pulling an envelope from his desk drawer. This arrived from your grandmother's attorney today. Instructions were to deliver it after all legal proceedings concluded. My hands shook as I opened it. Grandmother Abigail's familiar handwriting filled the page. My dearest Caroline, if you're reading this, you finally stood up for yourself. I knew you would eventually. You were always stronger than they let you believe. I watched them dim your light for years. Your mother's subtle cruelty. Your father's weak enabling. Your brother's entitled manipulation. Each time they dismissed your dreams or denied your potential, I saw the hurt they pretended not to notice. The money was never just about money. It was about giving you the freedom to become yourself. Use it wisely, but don't let fear guide you. You've lived with enough of their fear already. Remember, one day all debts come due, even emotional ones. With love and pride, Grandma Abigail. A tear splashed onto the paper. I carefully folded it and put it in my bag. As I left Michael's office, my phone rang. Noah, my son, calling from Seattle. Mom? I just saw Uncle Jason's post. Something about family betrayal? What's going on? I hadn't told Noah about the lawsuit, not wanting to burden him with family drama while he was establishing his career. It's a long story, I said. But the short version is, I finally got control of grandmother's trust fund. The one they've been managing for you all these years? I could hear the air quotes in his voice. Noah had always been perceptive about family dynamics, even as a child. Yes. Turns out they've been using it to fund Jason's lifestyle and businesses. I'm not surprised, he said simply. Remember when I needed tuition money and they said the trust was tied up in investments, but bought Uncle Jason that boat the same month? I winced, remembering Noah's disappointment. We'd ended up taking out student loans, which he was still paying off. Listen, Mom, I got a bonus last month. I was going to surprise you with a visit, but maybe you could use the money for something else. No, sweetheart, I said quickly. I've got plenty now. In fact, I paused, an idea forming. How much do you still owe on those loans? About 30,000. Why? Consider them paid. I'll transfer the money tomorrow. His silence spoke volumes. Mom, you don't have to. I want to, I interrupted. That money should have gone to your education in the first place. And Noah? Why don't you take some time off? Come visit for a few weeks. I'm house hunting. House hunting? Where? I smiled, watching the afternoon sunlight glint off downtown buildings. I'm thinking somewhere with a view. Maybe by the water. I've always wanted to wake up to the sound of waves. New foundations. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and freedom through my home office window. 6 months after the court ruling, I'd moved into a modest but beautiful beachfront property, not as extravagant as what Jason had planned for his honeymoon, but perfect for me. My graphic design business had expanded since I'd been able to invest in proper equipment and marketing. I'd even hired 2 assistants, both women over 40 who'd faced age discrimination in larger firms. On my desk, next to my computer, sat Grandmother Abigail's framed photo. She'd known all along what I was capable of, if only given the chance. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Final restitution payment received. Trust is fully restored, plus interest. Congratulations. I smiled, remembering his words from our last meeting. Justice isn't always satisfying, but it's necessary. The doorbell rang. Margaret stood there with a bottle of champagne, grinning. Ready to celebrate? Come see this first. I led her to my office, pulling up my business website. Just landed 3 new major clients. Look at you, boss lady. She sprawled on my office couch. Speaking of business, did you see Jason's LinkedIn update? I hadn't checked in months. Do I want to know? He's working as a junior sales rep at some software company. She smirked. Entry-level position. Karma's interesting that way. My phone buzzed again. An email from Mother's sister, Aunt Julia. Saw your new design work online. Brilliant stuff. Your grandmother would be proud. P.S. Your mother's still telling everyone you had a mental breakdown, but nobody's buying it anymore. Delete? Margaret asked, watching me read it. No. I put the phone down. It doesn't hurt anymore. And it was true. The pain that had been my constant companion for decades, the feeling of being less than, unworthy, incapable, had receded like a tide, leaving behind solid ground on which to build a new life. The sound of waves filled the comfortable silence. Then Margaret sat up suddenly. Oh, almost forgot. Look what I found at that vintage store. She pulled something from her bag. An old photo album. Inside were pictures from my childhood. Before the manipulation started, before Jason became the golden child, there was one of grandmother Abigail teaching me to paint, another of me proudly showing off a school art project. You were smiling in all of these, Margaret observed. Really smiling. A notification popped up on my laptop. An email from a potential client. The subject line made me freeze. Wedding design services inquiry from Vanessa. You're kidding. Margaret leaned in to read. She's getting married again already? I opened the email. I know this is awkward, but I've seen your recent work. It's exactly what I want for my wedding. Money's tighter now thanks to you, but I'm willing to pay full price. Business is business, right? The audacity, Margaret muttered. I hit reply. Thank you for your interest. Unfortunately, my schedule is fully booked. Best wishes for your special day. Classy? Margaret nodded approvingly. My phone lit up with a text from father. Your mother's birthday dinner is next week. There's still time to make things right. I showed it to Margaret. What do you think make things right means in dad speak? Probably come grovel while we pretend nothing happened. She poured the champagne. Delete? Already did. We moved to the beach facing deck. The sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Remember what you said when we first found that email about Jason's wedding? Margaret asked. About being tired of playing small? Yeah. You're not small anymore. She gestured at the house, the ocean, my thriving business. You're exactly the size you're meant to be. I thought about the long journey to this moment. The years of doubt and manipulation. The pain of divorce and rebuilding. The struggles of single motherhood. The physical challenges of aging in a society that devalues older women. All of it had brought me here, to this place of strength and self-determination. You know what's funny? I said, watching the waves. They always said they were protecting me from failure, but they were really just protecting themselves from my success. My laptop pinged with another new client inquiry. More work, more opportunities, more growth, all on my own terms. To think, Margaret mused. All of this started because they wanted to spend your money on a wedding in Santorini. I looked at my grandmother's photo, at her knowing smile. No, I said quietly. It started long before that. It started the day she saw who I could become, even when no one else did. The sun dipped lower, painting everything in gold. Inside my office, contracts waited to be signed, clients waited to be amazed, and opportunities waited to be seized. All because I finally stood up and claimed what was mine. Not just the money, my power, my voice, my life. From my desk, I could hear Noah arriving, his car door slamming in the driveway. He'd flown in for the weekend, our relationship stronger than ever now that the shadow of family dysfunction no longer loomed over us. Mom? He called from the hallway. I brought that painting you wanted. I smiled. Life at 48 wasn't what I'd expected. It was better. Harder in some ways, easier in others, but authentically mine at last. The waves crashed steadily against the shore, erasing footprints only to create clean sand for new beginnings. Just like my life, finally my own to shape, at the exact moment I had the wisdom to know what to do with it.